Before we get started with this episode of In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, I want to thank everybody who reached out in concern for me missing the Washington football team matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm doing well, and I'm back at it. Attended practices here at the end of the week and getting ready for the encounter with the Miami Dolphins. It was very, very strange, believe me. That's the first Bengals game that I watched on television since 1985. Other than that, I was either in the booth for the Bengals or in the booth elsewhere in the National Football League with broadcast assignments with Fox or NBC or whoever. But I had never been at my house watching a game on television. So that was a very, very odd, unique experience. And in 1985, that was when I was playing in the USFL, and the USFL played in the spring, and I was able to attend Bengals home games on my season tickets, go to games with my son, and we'd watch the home games, and I watched the away games on television. That's the last time I watched a Bengals game on television. So it was a very strange experience. And again, thanks to everybody that showed concern by reaching out. And I want to assure everybody that I'm doing very, very well and back at it. Appreciate you all. Observations, Friday's practice, August 27th, 2021. The biggest observation, Joe Burrow did not work out today. He had a day off or day of rest. I think it's perfect timing. They're going to do very little, if anything, at practice tomorrow, and then he's still scheduled to play on Sunday. You're in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. And Joe Burrow, that's the story. He will take snaps. How many, I guess, is the question. I think it'll be very limited, to say the least. And like I've said before, I see an analogy between when Tom Brady jumped out in the field for the first series for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in preseason game number 1. The place went nuts. I have a feeling the fans that are at Paul Brown Stadium will get their first look at Joe Burrow after recovery from his knee surgery, and the place, I think, will go off the hook as well. And I think they're looking to create that kind of enthusiasm and get the players a little bit more juice for that third preseason game against the Miami Dolphins. Not that they need it, because a lot of guys are playing for their football lives. But like we said, they're not going to put Joe Burrow in any kind of danger. They can control the narrative in that regard. Just make sure that he's not in any kind of traffic. You won't see him taking 5-step, 7-step drops, climbing the pocket, doing all those kind of things. I'd be shocked if that's the case. And in my mind, I think it'll be maybe a handful of snaps, and Joe will come out of the football game. The first offensive line will be out there with him as well, and that includes center Trey Hopkins. And this is kind of like the unsung hero guy. Joe obviously is a main focus, rehabilitating from his ACL, MCL tear. I mean, he had MCL damage as well. Trey Hopkins had an ACL reconstruction. So every knee injury is different. Every surgery is different. Every rehabilitation of that surgery is different. But it's miraculous that both of these guys are going to be playing in the opener against the Minnesota Vikings on September 12th. And Trey Hopkins, I think, is an unbelievable story because, Joe Burrow got 10 games in. He hurt himself in the 11th week of the season. Trey Hopkins tore his ACL the last game, second half of the last game in January, early January of this year. For him to be back at this point in time is truly a heck of a feat. And I think the two of them deserve credit for each other. They were workout rehab partners for the duration. They pushed each other, and they got some great results. Nick Cosgrave did a heck of a job coordinating that rehabilitation on their behalf for the Cincinnati Bengals organization. And you have the battery, the center and the quarterback, both coming back from ACL injuries, one snapping the ball to the other. The only two guys that handle the ball every single snap are the center and the quarterback. No matter what happens, the center and the quarterback have to handle the ball every single play, every single snap. So to have that battery back together and playing a few snaps in that final preseason game will be a good thing to see. No defensive starters will take any snaps whatsoever. So they've wrapped up their preseason work with limited snaps, but not giving up a point and looking pretty effective. So they want to make sure that everybody is ready for the opener physically. They don't want any kind of injury to curtail that possibility. So this final preseason game will be a big evaluation game, no question about it, with the Miami Dolphins. And I think it's a great opponent to have that evaluation process going with. because a big part of that evaluation process is special teams. There's a bunch of hot spots in the very back end of the roster at a lot of position groups, and quite a few of them are going to be determined by special teams play. And I think that this is going to be a very, very good game to have special teams play determine if you make the football team or not, because both teams are coached by outstanding special teams coaches. Darren Simmons, we know what he's meant to the Cincinnati Bengals organization. I think he's the best special teams coach in the National Football League, and he's also assistant head coach to show the importance that he carries in terms of the coaching staff and the players that he coaches. So he's held in high regard by the Bengals organization. Same thing for the Miami Dolphins. Danny Crossman is their special teams coordinator, like Darren Simmons is for the Bengals. He's also the assistant head coach for Brian Flores, because he is one of the better special teams coaches in the National Football League as well. So both of these teams will be well coached, great fundamentals, great discipline. So it'll be a great evaluation for the players. Just trust your technique, go out and perform. And the tiebreaker could be who does an effective job on special teams in this final preseason game against a quality opponent. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. I'm sure special teams fur will fly, as they say, on special teams, and there'll be some huge efforts out there in terms of special teams play. When you think about it, Clayton Fedulum, former Cincinnati Bengal, is now down there with Danny Crossman, the Miami Dolphins. And he's been a Pro Bowl special teams player. He led the Miami Dolphins in tackles last year with 9, and he forced a fumble and recovered a fumble. And then the Dolphins got Stephen Carter, the third tight end for the Bengals, a big special teams performer, one of the core special teams players for Darren Simmons in free agency. He also went to the Miami Dolphins. So you have Danny Crossman really respecting and appreciating what Darren Simmons did in developing these two football players in terms of special teams studs. And now he's got them as Miami Dolphin players. I'm not sure how many special team snaps these guys will get in this evaluation game, this third preseason game, but it just, again, shows the respect level between these two organizations. They've had some battles over the years in special teams play, so it'll be an interesting one to watch. Let's talk about some hot spots in terms of final roster positions, battles that'll be going on. Let's talk about the offensive line initially. Fred Johnson and Isaiah Prince. It's going to be a case of who shows up the best in this game is going to have a big, big factor on who makes the football team. Let's start at the beginning. I'm going to break this roster down. There are 53 players on the final roster. Tuesday, the cut will be made to the final 53. So for the purposes of this particular exercise, I'm going to say 25 offensive players, 25 defensive players, and 3 specialists. Kevin Huber, I've got Evan McPherson as the kicker, and will they be able to trade Austin Seibert? I think that's an interesting thing. I think they're going to be banging the phones to try to get some value for Austin Seibert instead of just waive him. But everybody knows that he's going to get waived. But it goes just like the draft, the reverse order of how you finish the season. And if you need a kicker and you're not going to be able to get him off the waiver wire potentially, there could be some trade value there. So we'll be taking a look at that. And then Clark Harris, the veteran deep snapper. Those 3 guys, in my mind, are the 3 guys that are going to be on the roster when the final 53-man roster is announced on Tuesday. But I don't think it's the final. There could be some tweaks. I mean, there's going to be a lot of players out there on the street. And I think they're going to be continuing to bang the phones in terms of trades. Wouldn't shock me if with the need now they have at edge rusher because of the injury to Joseph Asai, would not surprise me if they've got if a team has a surplus of defensive ends, but they have a real deficit in the offensive line or at cornerback or maybe a position where the Bengals have some depth, wide receiver, whatever the position group may be. Maybe you can work a trade. Who knows? Maybe you can, but the odds and the percentages of getting that done are not high. But it doesn't mean you just don't bang the phones and try to improve your team, not only through Tuesday, but through however many weeks it takes to get your roster exactly where you want it. Within the 25 offensive players, I've got 7 wide receivers on this roster. I've got 10 offensive linemen. I've got 3 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks, and 3 running backs. And so let's base it off of that. 10 offensive linemen. If I go 11, I'm only going to go 6 wide receivers. So, you can tweak your numbers internally, but I'm starting with 7 wideouts and 10 offensive linemen. So for that 10th spot, Fred Johnson, Isaiah Prince, and don't discount Trey Hill, the rookie center from Georgia. This guy's a fluid football player. He had a huge mistake. He snapped the ball a count early, and it ended up being a fumble. His quarterback didn't help him much, Kyle Shermer, though. Just get out of when you get out of pocket, throw it away. Don't hold on to the thing and fumble it. Throw it away. You're out of the pocket. You can intentionally ground it. Don't hold on to the ball and exacerbate the problem with the early snap with a fumble and a turnover. Just make it an incompletion and just reload. 2nd and 10. Not giving the other team the football going the other way. So Trey Hill did make a mistake there. But, boy, I'll tell you, you watch the tape of that game, he played pretty darn well at the line of scrimmage now. This guy's a pretty good football player. If you put him on waivers, you're taking a chance that somebody that needs offensive line help will not claim him on their 53-man roster. You're hoping that he will clear waivers and you can bring him back on the practice squad. So Trey Hill, Isaiah Prince, Fred Johnson, 2 out of those 3 guys, if they only keep 10 offensive linemen, only 1 guy's going to make it, and 2 of them are going to be on that waiver wire, hoping to be able to bring them back to the practice squad. Fred Johnson is a bigger, stronger player than Isaiah Prince, but Isaiah Prince is got the length like Fred does. He's not as strong, but he's more athletic, and he can bend a little bit better. And so it's going to be an interesting battle. And it'll be interesting to see who performs at a high level. I think Isaiah Prince has pleasantly surprised a lot of people. And Fred Johnson just has to be more consistent with his technique. Every single player, if I can give a piece of advice to every single player that's battling for a position, the final 53-man roster or a practice squad, trust your technique. Don't have in a 5-play sequence 4 plays where your technique is sound and great, and then the 5th where you're just off the rails. For whatever reason, your mind gets blown and you don't trust your technique and you're doing something that hasn't been coached the entire training camp, and then you have a train wreck and you have a play that you're not proud of. Those are the kind of things you have to fight through because there's pressure in this last preseason game for a lot of these guys. So that's the offensive line. At the wide receiver position, I think that Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, obviously the big 3, are going to make the football team. Auden Tate will be number 4th. Mike Thomas will make the football team as well because of special teams play. Stanley Morgan the same way in my estimation because of special teams play. So now you've got 6 wide receivers there. Who's the 7th wide receiver? Is the 7th wide receiver Trenton Irwin or Trent Taylor? I think it probably comes down to those 2 guys. So the battle of the Trents would be for the 7th wide receiver position in my estimation. And Trenton Irwin has gotten more opportunity to show himself than Trent Taylor has. Trent Taylor just has not had balls come his way. He's not been that involved yet in the return game and things of that nature. I think this game against the Miami Dolphins is monumental for Trent Taylor. He's going to have to get some looks in terms of at the receiver position, and he's going to have to get some opportunity in terms of special teams play. Trent Taylor is 5'9". He's a slot receiver, and he's a return guy. Trent Irwin is a bigger player. He can play slot, and he can play outside receiver. Trent Taylor would struggle to play outside receiver, so Trent Irwin gives you a little more versatility there. Trent Taylor gives you special teams value as a return guy. Darren Simmons has tried to see if Trent Irwin can return punts as well, and if he can play other special teams. He had a kickoff coverage tackle as well in special teams. So it's going to be a very, very interesting night for the Trents. The Battle of the Trents will be raging against the Miami Dolphins. The running backs, 3 running backs, Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine. Everybody's kind of stamping those 2. And then who is the 3rd? Jaquez Patrick. Jaquez Patrick has run the ball as well as it can be run, really. Unfortunately, Travion Williams suffered a hamstring injury. That curtailed a lot of his opportunity. Big night for Travion Williams against the Miami Dolphins. If he can go, if he's close to being able to go, if the doctors allow him, he is going to go. There's no way that he's going to, nurse that hamstring, even if it's got a little bit of soreness left in it if the medical people clear him. Chris Evans, is battling. Puka Williams. I mean, there's a lot of running backs battling for that third spot. And at this point, Jacques Patrick would probably be saying, what more can I do to make the football team? Well, run the football is just one aspect of it. You have to prove you can handle blitz pickup, which Samaje Perine has proven very, very well. Chris Evans is going to have to prove it. Jacques Patrick, Trayvon Williams. That's going to be the big thing, I think, against the Miami Dolphins. How do they handle blitz pickup? If the Miami Dolphins don't blitz heavily, that'll be a little bit of an issue because you won't get much opportunity to evaluate these guys. Although every single day in practice, believe me, they're involved in blitz pickup drills, and the coaches are monitoring who's doing what in terms of protecting the quarterback with respect to blitz pickup. You can't go the wrong way. You have to have proper technique. You have to keep your pad level low. You have to get underneath the defensive player. You have to finish those blocks. All of that's going to be hugely important, not just running the football and catching the football. Blitz pickup will be a tiebreaker, as well as special teams play. Who's going to give Darren Simmons the most snaps on Sunday afternoon against the Miami Dolphins? So real battles at the wide receiver position and the running back position in terms of who's going to be those final roster spots, and a lot of it is going to be predicated by special teams play. Offensive linemen, special teams play, not a big issue. You're talking about extra point field goal. Maybe you're a wedge guy in a kickoff return team. That's not offensive line aren't. There's not a whole lot of snaps there to be able to get involved with Darren Simmons in that regard. Defensive end, edge rush. I mean, the year before last, defensive tackle was the position group that got destroyed. Geno Atkins had an injury that he never did recover from. You had Josh Tupou, who opted out. Rennell Wren had a quad injury that took him out. Mike Daniels was out for a good part of the season. So the interior defensive line got beaten up last year. This year, it's edge guys. Wyatt Hubert, the 7th-round pick, had a pec injury before training camp even started, a weight room injury. He's out for the year. He's an edge guy they drafted. Khalid Kareem has had shoulder problems. He's got some arthritis in his shoulder. That's an issue. He'll probably be able to go, but he's got a little bit of a problem that he's dealing with. Joseph Asai had surgery on a meniscus cartilage tear. He could be out for the year. And I tore a meniscus, and there's different tears on meniscus. I tore a meniscus in my knee Super Bowl season, and if you tear it horizontally, where it's like a flap, it can be carved out and smoothed over, and you can keep a high percentage of the meniscus for cushion in that knee, and you can come back quickly. I didn't even miss a game. I missed like 2 days of practice, had the surgery on Monday, and tore it on Sunday against the Cleveland Browns, had surgery Monday, practiced on Wednesday. So I was very fortunate with mine. If you tear it the length of the meniscus instead of horizontally, if you tear it vertically, and you can't just carve out the torn piece, because if they carve it out, there'll be no meniscus left, and you won't have any cushion in your knee, then they have to suture it. They have to stitch it up. And now that's going to take months to recover from. And I think that's more of the injury that Joseph Asai is looking at. I think he tore it vertically instead of horizontally. So like I said, every injury is different, every surgery is different, every rehabilitation is different. But unfortunately, they're looking at not having a contribution from Joseph Asai potentially for the season. So, that damages your depth at that outside edge rush position. Cam Sample dinged up his shoulder a little bit as well. So they have some issues on the perimeter. But Sam Hubbard, obviously, Trey Hendrickson, they're going to make the football team. Khalid Kareem is going to make the football team. Cam Sample is going to make the football team. So there'll be 10 defensive linemen. Those guys are on the edge. Noah Spence they just signed because of the injury to Asai. They signed Noah Spence, 6'2", 255-pounder. He's more of a Carl Lawson, I think, tight body and tight player. Right now, he's just trying to get his wind. He's going to probably play a lot against the Miami Dolphins, though. He came into the league as a second-round draft pick, highly regarded player. So is he the guy, or are they going to try to bang the phones for trades? Or are they going to just check out the waiver wire and see if there's anything that people let go? But if you have talent on the edge, man, you're not necessarily let go. Then, of course, the big story at training camp, Darius Hodge. Darius Hodge had never played edge rush. He was a linebacker at Marshall, but he's shown a natural ability to rush the passer on the edge. But is he able to do anything more than that? Are those 10, 12, 15 snaps a game valuable enough? Well, I'll tell you, if he continues to pressure the quarterback the way he's shown, yeah, they're valuable in this era of throwing the football on the edge like that. But can he play special teams for Darren Simmons? Can he give him some snaps there? Can he play the run well enough? Is he going to be able to be assignment sound? All those kind of things are going to be part of the evaluation process. And are they going to count him as a linebacker or as a defensive lineman when they put their roster together? I would count him as one of my 10 defensive linemen. So now it's getting crowded. And then on the interior, you have to consider that in your 10 people. DJ Reader, Larry Ogunjobi, Josh Tupou, Tyler Sheldon. I think those guys make the football team. The big battle in my mind inside is between Rennell Wren and Mike Daniels, and it's a pretty good battle. And Rennell Wren can give you he's got youth on his side. He's got a bigger body. He can probably give you more snaps than Mike Daniels. Mike Daniels he's had some injury issues in terms of staying on the field. I mean, he's a little bit longer in the tooth, but that's a battle that's raging right there at the defensive tackle position. That one's going to be interesting to watch. And then we talked about the edge guys. So, you can only keep 10 of those defensive linemen, 5 inside, 5 on the edge. And a lot of these edge guys, they're going to have to show that they can do some things on special teams for Darren Simmons as well. At the linebacker position, you're going to keep 5 guys there, 10 defensive linemen, 5 linebackers, 10 defensive backs is my breakdown on the 25 on the defensive side of things. And the 5 linebackers, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis Gaither, I should say, Jordan Evans, and Marcus Bailey. Those are my 5 linebackers. That's why I don't count Darius Hodge necessarily as a linebacker unless you want to count him as a linebacker and keep 6. But you're going to have to take one from one of the others. You're going to have to take one from the down lineman and make that 9, or one from the secondary and make that 9 on the back end. So those are what I'm looking at there. I think those battles are pretty much been pretty much decided, and there's going to be some special teams from Jordan Evans and Marcus Bailey and Davis Gaither and guys like that are going to be playing their share of special teams for Darren Simmons as well. Looking into the secondary, Mike Hilton, Trey Waynes, who unfortunately won't be playing Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. He's got a hamstring issue. I think he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, maybe longer than that, unfortunately. And he's now had hamstring issues on both legs in training camp. So he's having some soft tissue issues with his legs, that's for sure. Awuzie is the other corner. Those are the 3 starting corners. And then after that, you got to go Darius Phillips because he's going to be in the return game. Eli Apple, who I think is going to start for Trey Waynes on Sunday. And then is it Jalen Davis or is it Tony Brown? Jalen Davis who's that? The 10th defense or the 5th cornerback out of the 10 defensive backs? Is it Jalen Davis or Tony Brown? Tony Brown has shown himself with significant value for Darren Simmons in the special teams. Jalen Davis has just been okay in that regard. But Jalen Davis is a much better cover corner. So what do you do? I mean, right now, Trey Waynes is potentially down for the opener against the Minnesota Vikings. That means Eli Apple will move up to a starting position. So if you have another injury, Jalen Davis is a lot more valuable to you than Tony Brown because he's a better cover guy. But Tony Brown is more valuable on special teams right now unless Jalen Davis really shows something against the Miami Dolphins. So these are the kind of things that Darren Simmons is going to be evaluating, and the rest of the coaching staff is as well. So those are the 5 cornerbacks in my estimation. Jalen Davis and Tony Brown are battling it out. Actually, 6 cornerbacks. I have 6 cornerbacks and 4 safeties in the secondary for the 10. Hilton, Waynes, Awuzie, Phillips, Apple, and either Brown or Davis. Battle royale for that final spot. Von Bell, Jesse Bates III, Ricardo Allen, Brandon Wilson are the 4 safeties. Trayvon Henderson, I think Trayvon Henderson will be a practice squad guy if in fact he does clear waivers, but I think those other 4 will be the 4 safeties. So those are my 10 guys in the secondary. So I've got 53 players, 25 on offense, 25 on defense, and 3 kickers. And I've probably got, of the 53 players, I've probably got 49 or 50 spots that I feel pretty good about. But those last 4, maybe 5 spots are going to be a battle royale in that final preseason game. Everybody's trying to put their best foot forward, make a good showing against the Miami Dolphins, because if you don't make the Bengals 53-man roster, you're out on the street with hundreds of others, and then now it's a free-for-all. Who's going to be brought back to what team for which practice squad? And you're trying to get your life to continue in the National Football League with that 16-man practice squad. I don't think that there's a coach with more pressure on him than the special teams coach has for every football team in this final preseason game, because this is where all the battles are. This is where the final roster formulation is completed. And it's your job to give them all an equal opportunity to show themselves. And now snaps become, sometimes become very difficult. If your offense has a big night, you have multiple play drives of 7 plays or more, and you're not punting very much, you don't have much punt tape to evaluate. You may have a few extra point field goal opportunities to evaluate, because you may have put some points on the board. And then you're kicking it off, so kickoff coverage will have a lot of evaluation. But if you're holding down the other team from scoring, kickoff return may not have a whole bunch of opportunity and evaluation. So there's a lot of pressure on special teams coaches to try to figure out the best way to evaluate as many guys as fairly as possible in that last opportunity, that final preseason game. But it's been up to the player, because there were 2 other games involved in the process, as well as every single practice. So does it come down to the final preseason game? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's so close. The battles between the players, they've been pretty equal at practice, pretty equal in the first couple of preseason games. It might come down to that final preseason game. But you've hoped at this point in time that you separated yourself a little bit during the course of training camp, every single practice, preseason games prior to this final one, and you don't have that much pressure on you as a player and the special teams coach to get the opportunities that you feel like you have to put your best foot forward and try to make the football team. It's going to be interesting. I think it's a good opponent to have the final preseason game against, the Miami Dolphins, and the Bengals will go out there and go through the evaluation process, and I think they'll ultimately pick the best 53, give them the most available depth, the most depth, because honestly, to me, it's not just all about the starters. Very rarely do you go through an NFL season at a position group and not experience any injury anywhere. I mean, a lot of times you'll lose, 2 starters in your offensive line for extended periods of time during the season. You lose at least 1 or maybe 2 of your running backs. You just hope and pray that you don't lose a real significant player for the year. And the final thought is you don't want to lose any of these players fighting for jobs in this final preseason game. So knock on wood, everybody stay healthy. Everybody go out there and go 100,000%, full speed, avoid injury, and may the best man win.
Hi, Dave Lapham here. Have you heard about In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics? Catch new episodes from the world of sports and broadcasting. Search for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.